Well, welcome in, LSU fans, and happy St. Patrick's Day to you, wherever you might be celebrating. My name is Bryce Koon alongside Glen West. We come to you on this Monday afternoon. You might be listening on Tuesday. Heck, you might be listening after LSU plays their midweek game. But we welcome you in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you subscribe to all those podcast feeds and continue to listen to us each and every single week. Where we come off a weekend, Glen, where LSU, we talked about it, I guess, a couple weeks ago, was going to open SEC play with one of the perceived lower level teams in the conference. And it's no disrespect to what Missouri was or what Missouri is, but it was more of a gentle ease into conference play than last year. I guess that's the best way to put it. But the Tigers take care of business with the clean sweep over Missouri. You were there on Friday, Sunday. I was there on Saturday. So let's kick this thing off, man. You and I were talking about you could be nitpicky about certain things. Hey, the starter's going a little bit longer. I'll have some thoughts on Ianson on Saturday. Maybe the bullpen, some of those arms hitting the strike zone more consistently. Okay. But overall, a sweep is a sweep. And it's SEC play regardless of your opponent. You went out there and took care of business. So tell me, what were your big themes you took away from the weekend?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for wearing green. One of us has got to wear green on St. Patty's Day, and I'm wearing dark black. So, for those who are just listening to the pod, clearly one of us got the memo that today was St. Patrick's Day, and the other one didn't. But yeah, in terms of themes for this past weekend, I think you have to start with the offense. I think the hitters are really in a nice groove right now. We saw it in Texas. We saw it in the weeks leading up to conference play, and you wanted to see it translate to some SEC games. And yeah, Missouri is going to be one of the lower ranked teams in the conference that LSU plays this year. They might be the lowest, but for LSU to go out there and to hang 29 runs in 3 days, they did their job, and they did a really nice job of just kind of moving the offense forward and consistently finding ways to generate runs, and didn't have to rely on the home run ball. I can't remember exactly how many they hit. They made a hit 2 or 3 throughout the 3 days, but they did it primarily because they are an excellent team at drawing free passes. They're excellent at the next guy kind of, getting guys and runners in scoring position, and then they come up with the clutch hit that they need to. And there was that 1 8-inning stretch there against Omaha where they just weren't generating those. They weren't knocking those guys in, and after that, they've been pretty remarkable in terms of how consistent they've been. I believe since that game, they're averaging close to 11 runs a game, which is just really hard to do if you're any offense. Baseball is built to, at least for offenses, to be failures, 40% of the time if you're really, really good, or I should say 60% of the time if you're really, really good. And it's more like closer to 70 if you're just a good team. So the fact that LSU has consistently found ways to get home and to do it with a variety of different players. They're still rotating guys in. Josh Pearson started 2 games. And then, the last game, it was Ethan Fry that was in there at DH, and he goes 3 for 4 with, I believe, 3 or 4 RBIs in the Sunday game. Pearson's done a really nice job, whether he's had to play at DH or in the outfield at right field. Jake Brown has been just an absolute monster of consistency. He finally got his first home run. Actually, one of the I'll say it here. I called my shot on that one. I turned the wind was blowing to right field heavily in pregame, and as Jake Brown was walking to the plate, I told Koki Riley, who works with the Advocate and is at all the games, I'm like, Koki, this is feeling like a Jake Brown home run game. And I kid you not, 2 pitches later, he smashes one into the right field bleachers. And so if anybody wants to doubt me on that, go find Koki and ask him if I called my shot on that one. But the fact that they're able to do this consistently, where they're generating all these runs without having to use that long ball, I think that's really an encouraging sign, and really just gets back to the foundation of what Jay Johnson wants this to be as an offense.
Yeah, you talked about, just so many different ways. And Jay Johnson's been saying this really since the spring, or I should say the winter workouts and kind of the early sprint scrimmage season, that this team is not, they're not cornered into just being, hey, we've got to hit, like you said, we've got to hit 4 or 5 big flies a game to go win, or we have 2 or 3 guys that really are the heart and soul of the lineup. Like, I don't think it's a disrespect. It's not saying that there's not a great player in this lineup. I just think everyone's really, really good, and anybody at any given moment can come up with that big hit. And you're seeing it, just from the game recaps or the game threads. If you're following on and go 24/7, it could be Daniel Dickinson, it could be a Jake Brown, it could be a Stephen Milam. Like it's really a pick your poison. I think that's what makes this offense just tough to get out, and it's really hard to go 1 through 9 and not find some traffic somewhere if you're an opposing pitching staff. And like you mentioned, I mean, ever since that Omaha game, I mean, Glenn, you said what, it was averaging 11 runs a game?
Close
Like
to
that's what
11. I
they're at?
think they're right
Close
around
to
10 and a
11?
half
Yeah.
over their last 14 or so games, which is a nice sample size. I mean, a huge
Yeah.
sample size there to kind of have that be such a high number.
Yeah. And so it's just they're a problem, and in a good way. Like like this lineup is a problem, and it's also interesting too to kind of see, something that I thought coming out of the weekend, staying with the offensive tune, was the game on Saturday for Michael Braswell, and just finding a way to contribute. That's what Jay talked about post game, was veteran player. Michael talked about the fact that he scuffled coming out of the gate last year and really turned it on. He's a guy who's played a lot of SEC ball. And Jay mentioned, he's like, outside of Josh Pearson, when you look probably at the game experience within the conference, Michael's up there, like in terms of guys who have played, a plethora of games, every weekend in this conference. And so he's going to, you kind of have the faith that he's going to figure it out. Now, the good thing is you have an offense that isn't predicated on Michael Braswell needing to be the guy. And also, you got a guy in Tanner Reeves who's been a fun watch, through the early portion of this season as well. So, Braswell, for me, that game Saturday was big. Kind of like I always use this analogy, like in basketball, when you see the free throw go through, it builds up your confidence, start making some more shots. Getting those bunts down and seeing, good things happen, getting the base hit, seeing good things happen can open the door, for bigger and more opportunities. And I think Jay has a good problem on his hands at third base if Braswell really starts hitting, because you've got Reeves, who's that lefty bat that has a really nice, swing, and then you've got Braswell, who what he can do and what he did for you down the stretch last year. So I just think, Glenn, that 1 through 9 in this lineup, I mean, look, we're an LSU podcast. We watch LSU more than, maybe the Mississippi State beat and all these other people. We might be a little bit biased. I just think that this is a lineup that's kind of a nightmare to go through in terms of imposing pitching staff. Like, you can plan all the right things in terms of your preparation for a weekend against LSU's lineup. And I think we saw that with Missouri. Like, I thought they had a good plan of what they wanted to do. And Missouri's just not as good. And that kind of showed on the weekend. Like, there's just not much you can
Yeah.
do when LSU hits the way they've been hitting.
Yeah, I mean, the 2023 team was just lights out with the home runs. 2024, they had to rely on home runs probably a little bit more than Jay Johnson wanted.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to do that this year at all. I mean, you look at the roster and they've got like 4 or 5 major contributors that are have an on base percentage north of 500. 21 games into the season. I mean, Curiel, as I'm looking at it right now, Curiel is at 598 on base percentage. Jared Jones is at 505. Daniel Dickinson's at 538. Josh Pearson's at John Pearson's at 545. He's played in 12 games, but he's made the most of his opportunities. And then Josh Pearson's at 507. So they have, that's what, 4 or 5 guys right there that I just rattled off. Guys who are major contributors to this team. Stanfield's up there with 480. Milam's at 451. Jake Brown's at 431. Like, these guys are all getting on base at a ridiculously high clip. And they just consistently put pressure on the defense. They're going to force defenses to make plays. They're going to force pitchers to make pitches because they're not going to get out easily. Like, they're just not. And I thought that was, kind of the first test here for them in terms of SEC pitching. And look, Missouri could very well be it. Like we mentioned at the top of this, they could be very well at the bottom of the SEC in pitching at the end of the year. But they still had some arms. Like, they had some good arms on that staff, guys that were throwing 92, 93. And there was I think their lefty on Friday was had a pretty good breaking ball, Los. I mean, he was really throwing pretty well in the early part of that Friday game, and LSU was able to kind of get on them and kind of pull away early. But I thought that they just did a really nice job of figuring out what they're good at, and they've really leaned into it here over the last 3 weeks of the season, and gives them a lot of confidence, I think, on that side of the ball to really kind of use this as momentum and propel them through their SEC play.
Yeah, and look, I mean, all due respect to Missouri's baseball program, this was kind of, you had the tune-up of the non-conference schedule, and this was kind of your tune-up for the SEC slate. You faced better arms, like you mentioned. You faced some good talent, and we're going to talk about it as we get, to close out the show this afternoon, or to close out the show in general. This road trip to Texas is going to be a big, I think, litmus test and benchmark on the road, hostile environment. Two teams that are, feel like they're rivals in pretty much, every single sport they go head to head at in some form or fashion. It's going to be a fun one. But let's talk about the pitching, Glenn, because I think that for a lot of the fans that, look, we love baseball, we talk baseball. A lot of the fans that are the diehard baseball fans, they're going to hone in on, you know, the pitching, especially on Saturday. I mean, I was down in New Orleans. I didn't get to see much of Sunday's game in terms of the play by play, but the bullpen was a little shaky. And I think against a better team, the worry is that could rear its ugly head. Now, LSU was able to escape. In the same vein, we could talk about how Kason Evans is just a monster, or as the Glen West kept saying, a dude out there on the mound. I saw the tweets and everything. But in all seriousness, let's start with starting pitching. I mean, you get Cade Anderson on Friday night, there, Glenn, Ianson on Saturday, and then obviously Shores on Sunday. Kind of walk me through what you thought about just as a whole. I can go more into Ianson on Saturday, but just kind of what you thought about Cade on Friday. And I mean, we talked about it. He just kind of sets the tone for you.
Yeah, he does a great job of that. I mean, he went 6 in the third, career long. He had 11 strikeouts. He only he gave up 3 earned runs, but I think a lot of that kind of came towards the end of his outing. He was really, or no, I should say, the 2 runs that he gave up were in the second. He gave up I think it was maybe a 2-run homer, even. I can't remember exactly, but he was able to settle in really nicely into his outing. And I believe he retired like 15 of the next 17 guys or something like that. And he was just mowing guys down after some early adversity there. And that's what you like to see from the Friday night guy. And look, Anderson's not going to be a guy that goes out there and doesn't and throws no hitters or doesn't allow runs here and there. I think what
Yeah.
he's just so good at, and I think what kind of one of the common themes of this weekend was for LSU, is that they didn't allow anything to like blow up in their face. I mean, they had one inning there where I think Missouri scored 3 runs, and they were able to go from a 3-1 deficit to a 4-3 lead, which LSU was able to match back, which I thought was another great takeaway from the weekend, was how good the offense was at responding every time Missouri was able to kind of throw a punch. But what Anderson does so well is just he just locates all of his pitches extremely well. And when you're locating your off-speed pitches for strikes on the corners, on the inside, on the outside, up, down, what it does is it allows you to kind of just not know what's coming next if you're a hitter.
Yeah.
And he was getting a lot of swing and miss with his fastball towards the end of that game on Friday night. He just does a really good job of setting hitters up for swing and miss opportunities, and that's something that they don't have, or they didn't show a lot of this last weekend. Like, Missouri was making pretty good contact with the ball, I thought, on that Saturday game and that Sunday game in particular, for guys that weren't named Anderson, Zach Cowan, or why am I blanking on the freshman right now?
Kason Evans.
Kason Evans,
Yeah.
yes.
There's so many good ones. It's okay.
There's the best freshman on the damn team, and I'm blanking on him midway through it. But yeah, that's but Anderson was really good. Like, he was just really sharp. Thought he had all of his pitches kind of dialed in, and he gave up a couple runs there. But when you look at kind of the rest of the roster and kind of what the rest of the staff has been doing, like, he's far and away, I think, your best starting option right now. Like, in terms of where they are at in their development, their maturity on the mound, and just kind of how they handle adversity. I think, Anderson's a step above kind of where everybody else has been to this point. And that's not saying that the other guys can't get there. But I think that, he's a good tone setter for the weekend. So really like what Anderson did on Friday. It was a mixed bag from Chase Shores on Sunday. Goes 3 2/3, I believe. Really, I thought came out firing. I think he had an 11 pitch first inning and kind of went 3 up, 3 down, was able to kind of set the tone there early. But kind of as his outing went along, Missouri did a nice job of driving up his pitch count, getting him into a lot of full counts, and kind of making him earn every out. And I think that's kind of the next phase of development for Shores, is to get that swing and miss pitch, that slider in particular, the 85 mile an hour slider, for that to be a really good pitch to get guys out with and kind of keep the pitch count down and keep opponents off balance, because if that thing can start landing for some more strikes and more swing and miss strikes, it just elevates that 98-mile-an-hour fastball even more. So,
Mhm.
he did a decent job. I mean, he gave up 3 runs in his outing, but only 1 run per inning the rest of the way. And LSU had to take him out, I think, with 2 outs left in the fourth, and that's when they kind of turned it over to Connor Ware and the rest of the bullpen guys. But I thought starting pitching from at least a Friday, Sunday perspective was really strong, and I'll let you talk about Ianson a little bit, and then we can talk about maybe one of the things that they have to get cleaned up, I think, as a staff as a whole.
Yeah. Coming into this weekend, Ianson was fresh off the 15 strikeout performance that he had. And, look, that was impressive. There's no doubt about it. I don't care. I'm one of those people that, like, I don't care who's in the box. Like, it's still hard to do your job, especially in the game of baseball. And so when you strike out 15, I mean, Glenn, if it was just me and you repeatedly up there, that's still impressive. Maybe not as impressive as what it did, but it is still impressive. My biggest thing with Ianson, I was talking with someone about this who's on the scouting side of things, and he was like, his under the hood stuff. Like when you go under the hood and look at some of the metrics of what Ianson has, you can see why he is profiled as a draft prospect and why he was so highly sought after in the transfer portal. And to the naked eye, I think for a lot of people, including myself, it's like his stuff's not overpowering. It doesn't look like that. Remember, we're just watching with the naked eye. We're looking at the miles per hour, the radar gun on the scoreboard. He doesn't have an overpowering fastball. He does have a devastating breaking ball, but he has to land it consistently, especially starting at about, it's like I say, around thigh high, and it's got to fall off the table. If he's starting it
Yeah.
around the chest or that's when he gets in trouble. And I kind of felt like that was a little bit of it. Like he was just catching too much of the plate. Now, the argument might be, well, Bryce, he's just throwing a lot of strikes. And look, I'd rather have that than free passes. I would rather you get hit than just walk people, make them earn it.
Yeah.
But I think with Ianson, for me, this was the first game probably since when they were in Frisco where you were like, okay, how does his stuff play when you face better competition? You got to see that Missouri hit him around a little bit. I was going back and looking at the sheet. The sheet, he went 3 2/3, 7 hits, 4 earned runs. He only had 1 walk. He had 5 strikeouts. But I think through nearly 70 pitches, you could see like when he's not landing, opposing teams can tag him, and I think that's just going to be the theme of who Ianson is this year. When he is dialed in, especially with the location, he can locate the breaking ball. The fastball plays better. When he's not locating that breaking ball, I mean, like that home run he gave up that really kind of sparked that huge inning that they had. And I'm going back, I believe it was the 4th inning where they put up 3. Yeah, in the top of the 4th.
Yeah.
Like when he couldn't get out of that home run he gave up, it was kind of like, okay, like this is where they may see him second or third time through the order. And all things considered, I still like him. Like I like his stuff. I like his demeanor. I like his mindset as a pitcher. Like I love the way that he attacks and how he wants to get right back on the mound and keep working. And I'm going to tell you this, if you're a fan listening or watching, Jay loves it. Like every time we talk to Jay about Ianson and Glenn, I don't know if it's just worked out the fact that, I've been the guy that's probably covered more of Ianson's games, but and
I
just in
think
terms
so.
of that, like every time we talk to him post game, it's like, that's why we went and got that guy in the portal. It's the mental side of things. And so his ability to bounce back is huge. Saturday didn't go according to plan, and I guarantee you there's no one more raring to go in a hostile environment in Austin, Texas next Saturday than Anthony Ianson. So it's just something to keep an eye on, I think. It's something that shouldn't surprise a lot of people when you kind of looked at his stuff. It's not like we're all spoiled, right? It's not Paul Skeens. It's not Chase Shores. Like he's not going to have the fastball that's going to, nearly hit triple digits type of stuff. It's not Maverick Rizzi, some of these other big arms, but he's a pitcher and he knows how to pitch. And when he's on, he's on. So I think I'm not overly concerned about it. I think it's just, it's just something to know. Like
Yeah.
you can't live 92, 93, 94 in the middle of the zone against SEC teams. Like they will hurt you. And, you can get away with against Missouri. I do think, and this Saturday game was obviously the closest game of the weekend. I do think, Glenn, like that's going to be something to watch on Saturdays. How do they handle that in terms of when you face the Texases, the Tennessees? I mean, these teams that really, I mean, they've got borderline big league talent right now on their roster in terms of what they can do. And so, just something interesting. Did you have any other thoughts on Ianson before we kind of maybe take a look at other pitching stuff in bullpen?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, I think, he's going to be fine long term. Like, I think the breaking ball is legit. Like you can watch it on TV and like the thing just dies, and it does a
It's
really
crazy.
good job of spinning it. And if he's able to continue to land those for low strikes and kind of get guys to swing and miss on it, it'll play with that 92, 93 mile an hour fastball. So I think,
Yeah.
long term he's going to be fine. But yeah, I did want to talk about, because we can't go this pod without not talking about the bullpen, and specifically the two guys that are, I think, far and away your best options right now out of the bullpen, in Zach Cohen, Zach Cowan. I keep saying Cohen. I've been told numerous times it's Cowan, and I keep saying Cohen because we used to play a team called Cohen when I was in high school, and so it
That's
just kind of
okay.
gets racked in my brain. But Zach Cowan, and Kason Evans are the two guys that are
Yeah.
just absolutely the guys that LSU is going to turn to in tough spots. And you saw it on Saturday with Kason Evans and what he was able to do. You were there. I mean, you can talk about him for a little bit, but just it felt like the electricity that he had on the mound was palpable, because it not only affected the way that Missouri was hitting, but it got to the fan base too. Like every
Yeah.
time he was throwing a pitch, it sounded like the fan base was just kind of up in arms. And it's honestly a sound that I haven't heard since since LSU had Paul Skeens and had those kind
Mhm.
of high throwing guys on the roster a couple of years ago. So just talk about what he was able to do, because I wrote it in our 3 up 3 down column. Like, he's your ace. Like, he's your guy that you're going to every single time this season, until Gavin Guidry gets healthy. That
And even then, like,
Yeah, and even then, you might go
yeah.
to him anyway. Like, he's the guy that you got to go to when you're down one and you need a zero, when you're up one and you need a zero. Like, he's the dude. He's the guy that you
Yeah.
got to go to.
I had a conversation just real quick with Scott Rabelais after the Saturday game. We were talking about Case, and he was, he said in the post game, he was like, I'm just really enjoying it. I've, kind of filled in for Gavin, and once he gets back, and he was very modest about it. And then he walked away, and I looked at Scott, and I was like, but what's to say, like, he's not that guy? Like, I mean, and look, Jay's going to handle how Jay's going to handle it, but Gavin's going to have to work himself in terms of high leverage situations. We know he has the moxie to be able to do it, but Kason Evans has given you no indication that he's not ready for the moment. And like you mentioned, Saturday, Glenn, I've watched. I'm a big Major League Baseball fan. People can tell behind me what team I root for and stuff like that. And I've loved college baseball, have called college baseball games, and covering LSU now. I don't know when I have seen a guy recenter himself like Kason Evans did on Saturday. Like that, take away what he was able to get out of it. Like the way he just flipped a switch of, like, Jay had no more mound visits. There was no opportunity to go out there. Nobody could go talk to him. And you've got a true freshman in an SEC game. I mean, it was 11,000 at the box on Saturday night. Like, it was rocking, like you mentioned. And he recentered himself in a very tough situation. And I mean, was locked in. Like, that was crazy. And that's special. Like, that's
I
something
believe
you
that's
can't
the first thing
coach.
that Jay said about it too. Like, when
Yeah.
somebody asked him about it, like, that is not common for a
It's
player
pretty
of that,
unique.
a college pitcher who has 4 years of experience and is put in
Yeah.
those situations. Sometimes don't have the moxie or the composure that he was able to show in that moment. So that's yeah. Sorry, I
And
didn't
you
mean to cut you
said
off there.
no, because you're right. I mean, Jay mentioned that, and you mentioned this too. Just the energy. Like, I wasn't here in 2023 to really witness kind of what that was like, and we saw it toward, I would say, on a very smaller scale towards the end of the season as LSU was making that push. The Ole Miss series, the Auburn series at home, where they had to win those and probably had to sweep them. But in terms of the first SEC home series and that Saturday night environment, like every pitch that Evans threw, the crowd was like, I mean, you could just feel the moment growing. And like that's something, like, for me as a baseball guy, I mean, we're all sports fans, like you kind of smile, like whether you're not supposed to be a fan or not or whatever, you're like, this is awesome. Because like
Yeah.
you can tell like it's building this crescendo to this massive moment of he gets the punch out and he's fired up, and he gets out of the eighth. And then what I thought was crazy is Jay puts him back out there for the ninth. And Jay said himself, he was like, that's not a highly advised situation. Like, in terms of baseball moves that you want to go out there and do, that's not really something that you're told to do, because it's called essentially an adrenaline dump. You dump all that adrenaline out in the eighth inning, and you have to build back up, which is really hard for relievers to do. And he said he looked down the edge of the dugout. There were no words exchanged, but Kaysen even said, he goes, kind of pacing back and forth, and then I locked in, and Jay didn't even say anything to him. And Case and jokes, he goes, "I was going to walk out there no matter what." So it was
Yeah.
it is what it is. But
Yeah.
I think he's a special player. That's a special mentality. And you talked about it, whether it's 4-year player or not, but the fact that he's a freshman, he gets that. That was huge. And then, obviously to get the 2 punch outs in the ninth inning and then the ground ball to be able to calm yourself to make the play and obviously in the game. I mean, that's going to play. And like you said, and I'll leave it here and I'll throw it back to you as we talk about the bullpen as a whole, because Jay said this. He said, to be a lead in this league, you have to have guys that set the tone, okay, and that are the stoppers. And LSU has that right now. And we can talk about this. They've got to kind of figure out the middle part. I mean,
Yeah.
Zach Callen can't throw every day. DJ Primo might be a guy that has a rubber arm and has to throw from every day. But right now, they've got the 3 starters, okay, and then they've got a guy that can be a stopper. And you could possibly add one here in a couple of weeks with Gavin Guidry, whatever his timeline is. That's the makings of an elite pitching staff. And I guess that's a good segue into the middle innings where, look, Primo's got a rubber arm. We saw Maverick Rizzi throw. William Schmidt looked great for 1 inning, got tagged a little bit there in that 2nd inning on Saturday. I mean, is that the nitpick part, I guess, of the pitching staff? Like just finding the roles specifically for the middle innings guys?
For sure. Yeah, I think that's the part there that they still have to figure out who's going to get you to the 8th or ninth inning in innings 5, 6, and 7, or 6 and 7 ideally. I mean, you'd like these starters to be able to go 5 innings at least on most weekends in the SEC. But I mean, just real quickly on Cowan, because he was the guy that actually closed 2 of those games this weekend. Like, I mean, you had the big one from Evans there in the middle of the series, but Cowan was out there for the final 4 outs on Friday. And he was out there for the final, I'm doing the math here, 7 outs on Sunday. And he, between the 2 games, he had 7 strikeouts, 1 walk, no runs on either, or he had 1 run in the game on the game on Sunday, but no runs in the game on Friday. Did just a really nice job. And throws just a ton of strikes. I mean, 36 pitches in one of the outings, 26 of them were for strikes. And then the other one, he threw 17 pitches and 12 of them were for strikes. Like, I mean, he's just really dialed in from a strike throwing perspective. And that changeup, I mean, the changeup that he throws, he's a guy that doesn't have overpowering stuff. He throws 91 on a good day. Like, he'll go 90, 91 for most of his outing. But the changeup that he has, we've asked so many players about a pitch that they're looking at another guy and they're like, okay, that's a pitch that I would love to have. And Zach Cowan's changeup has been said on more than one occasion. Probably 2 or 3 different pitchers have told me that they really like what Cowan does with that changeup. So he's got to put out pitch and just really consistent. You know what you're going to get every time you put him on the mound. He's going to flood the strike zone, get guys out, and that's really important because they have 2 guys I think that can be stoppers there and closers. And then you add Guidry into that mix as well. All of a sudden you're looking at 3 guys that can close out games for you, and you don't really have to have a bad heartbeat about it. Like, I mean, I think that they all feel good. It's just getting to those moments is going to be really important. And you've got to go to guys like Connor Ware. He's had some really good moments. He's had some bad moments in starts recently, but I thought overall what he did this weekend was pretty strong. He played. I think he showed up in 2 games. Didn't allow any runs in either of his 2 outings. Was, I think, pitched 2 innings total between the 2 relief appearances. He was able to get Chase Shores out of a pretty nasty 2-on, 1 out situation. I think he induced a double play to get out of 1 inning, and just like he's a guy that I think LSU is going to be able to rely on as a middle relief pitcher. The one guy that I think they need to become that other middle relief guy, the guy that can go 2, 3, 4 innings in the middle of a game, is William Schmidt. I mean, the freshman had, he had a rough Saturday game, but if you're gonna start to have doubts on William Schmidt because of that 1 outing, like, that's not the way to think. Like, he's going to be an absolute dude for LSU this year. He's going to need to get some of these jitters out. Jay said he was going to talk to him, I believe, after that game about just kind of what it was that might have gone awry with the 3 walks, but you just watch him pitch. He's electric. Like, if he's able to kind of put it together the way that Evans is starting to do right now, like, they've got some guys there in the middle innings that I think can go deep for you and get you through into that back end of the games. And so I do think that they have to monitor the free passes. They had 20 between walks and hit by pitches this weekend, but overall, like, if you're down on the pitching staff, I don't think it should be by much. Like these guys are going to be fine, I think, in the long run. And this weekend is going to tell us a lot about what they're made of on a true road environment.
The last thing I'll add on this, and we can kind of look ahead to Texas, is the big thing is we I don't know how much we really talked about this, but you don't have the dynamic lefty, right, Griffin Herring, that you had last year. And I'm not saying that these two guys can be that, but in terms of playing matchups, which we know Jay likes to do, you're going to encounter some big left-handed bats in this league. I think also you need Connor Ware to continue to trend up. He had a rough outing, last weekend, was kind of rough last Tuesday, against Xavier. But I thought he bounced back nicely this past weekend, got some confidence up. Jade was not concerned about, his outing, saying, hey, he just need to put together and stack some good outings. And then I mentioned him already, but DJ Primo, like that just feels like a guy that Jay wants to go to. And in terms of having, and I don't know who it's going to be between those two, but high leverage lefty situations, there's going to come a time, Glenn, where it's second and third, 2 outs, and you got, a big lefty hitter, and I can't remember his name for Tennessee right now, and it's Saturday night. You got to go get 1 out or 2 outs, something like that, and you're going to have to look down at the bullpen, and you look at the splits, and this guy struggles more against lefties. Well, you got to have that option, and so I think that is going to be something interesting to kind of watch the development of those guys. Like, what does that look like? Like I said, not a cause for concern, just a storyline, I think, to watch how that develops, because
yeah,
I mean, look, I don't want to be a homer here. If it does, the
well,
sky's the limit for this pitching staff.
he pitched in
I
all
think it
3
can be
games. Primo pitched in all 3 games. You had Connor Benj that appeared in 2. Like, you'd like to see Benj be able to consistently try to put, get out of jams. I mean, that's kind of been his role for, I think, the first month of the season, just kind of being the situation stopper, I guess, from a right-hander perspective. And maybe Primo can be that guy from a left-handed perspective. But if not, you really need Connor Ware. And I'd like to see Cooper Williams maybe get back into the mix a little bit from a left-handed perspective. But I also thought Maverick Rizzi is a guy that,
how can we forget about the 6'8" Maverick Rizzi?
When he's on, man, when he's throwing that 95, 96 mile an hour fastball for strikes, it just looks different coming out of a 6'9" arm. I mean, it looks like it's halfway towards the plate by the time he's releasing it. So, they have some options, and I think the biggest thing here is just don't panic about the pitching staff. They can be better. If this was one of their worst weekends of the year,
take it.
You take it. Like, I mean, they did a really nice job of managing innings and not letting those things get out of hand. So I think that's enough on the pitching staff. Let's talk a little bit about Texas and kind of what they have coming this weekend.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a Texas team. When you kind of look early at it, funny enough, and I know LSU fans will relish in this, it's the Longhorns who have maybe assumed the better team in the state of Texas rather than the Aggies. A&M fell out of the top 25, which I mean, I know LSU struggled last year, but a crazy descent in terms of how quickly it's happened for A&M. But obviously with Texas, I mean, Glenn, we'll have more stuff. I'm sure Jay will talk to the media before they head to Austin there as well. We'll have stuff leading up into the weekend. And maybe not what you want to see, but how excited are you kind of see this team? Because maybe it is what I said earlier. Maybe this is a litmus test against probably some of the best competition you've faced to date.
Yeah, it's the first true road environment that they are going to be playing in. And Texas is a program here that's under first-year coach Jim Schlossnagle, who was just from down the road in College Station. So, and they've really built it up quickly with not a lot of those Texas A&M players, kind of going with them. Like, I mean, usually a coach is able to, pry a few of his best players away from another program, and they didn't really get that this year from A&M in terms of Texas, kind of getting a lot of their players. So, look, I think they have shown to be a pretty solid pitching staff to this point. I mean, a really decent pitching staff. Their ERA is around 306. They've got some guys in Luke Harrison and Jared Spencer. Those guys have started pretty much all their games so far in terms of weekend starts. Both have a sub 2.5 ERA. Both throw a lot of strikes and strike a lot of guys out. They've each walked 10 guys apiece. So maybe that's an avenue here where LSU can wear them down a little bit and take good discipline at bats. But the other guy that they have is Max Grubbs, and he's a really good relief pitcher. I mean, just a guy who's got 4 saves already, a 0.93 ERA, throws a ton of strikes. He's been in a lot of games so far this season for them too, and so those are kind of their top 3 guys in terms of starters, and then a guy that can kind of close out games for them. So those are the 3 we'll be monitoring a little bit this weekend, and we'll see what they do from a hitting perspective. I haven't really done a huge deep dive into what they are as a hitting team, but they, I think they're going to have an opportunity this weekend to really go in there and prove, if you're LSU, that you're one of those elite teams in the country if you're able to go into Texas and take 2 out of 3. And I think at minimum, you just like to get 1 out of 3. I mean, like, if you're being realistic, it's tough to go into these SEC teams, SEC places, and expect a series win on the road. But if LSU gets out of there with 1 out of 3, you're not happy, but you're not completely disappointed either. So I think that's kind of my early thoughts there. We'll have, like you said, much more coming in on this series in the coming days. We'll get together with some of the guys from the Texas side and do a little behind enemy lines deal. So there's some things here that I think we can continue to dive into. But I think from an overall matchup perspective, this is going to be a really fun, interesting way to see kind of where LSU is at in their season, where they're at in terms of being able to compete with some of the better teams in the country and in this conference.
I'm with you. I think it's going to be a fun one. And, the fans probably care more about this than the players do. But, Tennessee got that opportunity last weekend to show they're elite, and they swept Florida. And so this is LSU kind of their turn to answer, and now you get to go. Now, Tennessee got to play that at home, but now you get to go on the road to one of the new teams in the SEC. But, Texas is a proud baseball program with a proud, rich history. Go there. Shoot, if you take 2 out of 3 or sweep them, now we're talking about Glen, I don't want to look too far ahead. You're talking about a collision course in Baton Rouge here, coming up in a month or so, where Tennessee comes to town, where it's going to be must-watch TV. And the get-in price, I'll say this, I was looked at the get-in price because my shout out to my dad, he listens to these, not an LSU fan, just supporting. So, hey, Dad, how you doing? But he did say, he said, Bryce, we're thinking about coming down, says so weekend. I can't remember the date. I said, well, that's the weekend they play Tennessee. Oh, you think we could get some tickets? So, well, if you would pack some PB&Js and bring your own bottles of water, because you're not eating or doing anything else the rest of the weekend in Baton Rouge, if you're going to pay the price, it's like $300 a pop aftermarket right now. So, all that to say is SEC play is going to be a lot of fun. And come hang out with us over at Go 24/7 to talk about all those things.
Guess what? You don't have to watch the games in the Longhorn Network this weekend. No Longhorn Network for your baseball games this weekend.
Thank God. Awesome. Thank God. Just ESPN Plus, SEC Nation. It's SEC Plus. It's going to be easy.
Yep.
There you go. Spring football, right? We're right smack dab in the middle of this thing. So stay tuned to the content there. Glenn and I will be doing some more podcasts later this week talking about what we see. Glenn, you get a full practice. For people who are watching or listening to this when we're publishing this on Monday, you're going to get a full practice on Tuesday to watch. Lots of intel coming from that. Glenn will have some notes from there that'll be really big. And then obviously Saturday we get another practice. And Saturday night, I will be, trying to stay awake with caffeine, watching the LSU women play and the NCAA tournament. So it's a loaded week of, as it always is here springtime in Baton Rouge. So make sure you hang out with all of us. My name's Bryce Koon. That's Glen West, Sunny Ship. Recruiting stuff in full thing. Glenn, I will show you this. I've been last 2 weekends recruiting events. You can see the tan line we're dealing with here. So it's for the audio listeners. That's why you got to go watch on YouTube so you can see that type of content. But it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun stuff. And make sure you stay tuned to the YouTube channel and Go 24/7. Get that subscription now so you can hang out with us on the message boards. But my name is Bryce Koon. That is Glen West. LSU baseball rolling along and headed to Austin this weekend, where we will have the recap of the action early next week. We'll catch you next time here on the Go 24/7 podcast.